An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight? If someone could give me a shout out in the comments, just let me know that you can hear me. That would be great. I'm just going to do my normal thing this week. I want to say hello to everybody in the chat, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on this week with my projects. And then I'm going to move into talking very quickly about making comics and appreciating comics. And any questions that you have about anything that I have to say, whether it's about what I have to say today or about what is going on with my crowdfunding or my channel or any of my videos, anything like that, ask away in the comments, and I will hopefully get to all of your comments before we leave tonight. And I will do that at the later half of my video. And just put in a question mark or my name so that I can figure out it's for me. Anyways, so what I am I'm always just talking about geeking out about comics. That's what this whole series is about that I'm doing on Wednesday nights, because I think that the good way, the traditional way of making comics has gone by the wayside, and it's deliberate. And so, oh, we got Michael says you can hear me. Great. And what was I saying? Oh yeah, that the great way of making comics has been pushed to the wayside, and that's what I want to go over. I want to go over older material, talk about the traditional way of making comics, so that if you make comics or you're thinking about making comics, you can understand a little better, hopefully, with me, not because I'm telling you this is the way it is, but with me, how comics are made. And if you're just someone who appreciates comics, you will appreciate them deeper and deeper just by knowing all that goes into making a good comic. So I'm going to just give a couple of shout outs from people in the comments. We have John from John's Long Box. He was here. I think he's gone now. He has to go to bed. He rises fairly early. Great channel, John's Long Box. I always give him a shout out because if you want a channel that does a showcase of older comics, you want to see some great older comics, go over to John's channel and subscribe to him just to see those beautiful old comics and listen to John talk about them as well. I want to say hi to Vaz. Vaz is in the comments. Michael is here, as I said already. We have Nick. We have Paulus. He says, bye, Crom. Yes, indeed. I love my intro. We'll say the trailer for Crom the Destroyer is my intro for now. So I want to say hello to Rex. How you doing? Nick is in the chat as well. And who else we got here? Tony is here. Let's see. All right. Final Fantasy is here as well, and Puffy. So I'm going to talk about panel layout and basically scripting for a comic right now. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this was because I'm getting the lettered pages for the first one quarter of the Valiant Heroes right now from Eric Weathers, who is my letterer. And it really made me think about lettering, and you're lucky I just didn't do another video completely about lettering. I know I've done 2 already, but honestly, to see it come together is so beautiful. I put out a tweet saying, you know, you don't think that lettering would make a big difference, but I always get emotional when I see the lettered pages because the whole thing has just come together. It's beautiful. And to see it come to life with the lettering, even though it's just temporary lettering and we're still working on some bits and changing things around, it is so beautiful to see. But the thing is, again, it is about the layout, and it has to do with, that is the lettering, it has to do a lot with how you're going to lay out your pages and whether or not you're going to do a full script or anything like that. And my ideas about the whole thing have changed over the last 2 years since I started making comics, and they're going to be changing, I know, more and more as I get more experience making comics. Because for Thomas Valiant, I did a full script because, well, it was the first one that I ever did, first comic I've ever done. I've done plenty of stories, and I've done a novel manuscript. Those are completely different things. Even with the story that I'm doing with Mike Gustovich, which was the Rampaging Thor. He did the art for it. I took that from an old story that I had written, and I had to translate it into a script. It was extremely difficult and different from what I usually do. But Mike, he's someone who has done art for Marvel and DC since back in the 80s. So, I wasn't pointing him in the direction of this is how you got to do it. He sent me scripts that he himself had written to give me an idea of what he's used to. And then I just went with that. But that's what I do with a lot of my artists. I see what they're comfortable with and what I'm comfortable with letting them do. And then I figure out which kind of script that I'm going to do for them. But with the first, that is to say, Thomas Valiant, my first book, with Renzo, it was a full script. I even actually printed off the script. It is a separate book. It's basically, well, it is the same size, and even longer than I think the graphic novel itself. So it's basically the same size as the graphic novel. It looks like a separate graphic novel. You can get it still. Honestly, I think if you order the Valiant Heroes, the Valiant Heroes campaign is still up. Along with Crom the Destroyer. I should have said that to begin with. Those are up right now, and the links for those are in the description. But if you go and buy the Valiant Heroes at checkout, you can also purchase Thomas Valiant #1. And I think, if I remember correctly, I do have a few copies of the script left, so you can purchase that as well at that point. So it's basically a compendium to Thomas Valiant #1, the script for Thomas Valiant #1. So you can see exactly what I'm talking about if you ordered that. And as I said, there's a couple left if anybody wants them. I'll probably put them up on a different campaign sometime to get rid of them, possibly. But anyway, I wrote a full script, and again, it was the first time I've ever done anything like that. And I was working with Renzo, who was a new artist to me. So I didn't know exactly what his qualifications were, how he was used to dealing with scripts. Renzo really likes full scripts. If he's telling me the truth, and I trust Renzo's telling me the truth, he likes full scripts so that he can get better ideas about where everything has to go. Although I do give him a lot of leeway, more and more. Within the Thomas Valiant #2, which he gave me the first pages for just a couple of hours ago, first inked pages for the first 5 or 6. He hasn't done all 5, but still. So he likes a good layout, but I'm letting him run more and more with what he can do because I can understand what he can do. And again, with Mike Gustovich, there was part of it that I just did as a script that he would be used to, like his own scripts, and then the rest of it I let him run with almost half the book, with Nick Axe and Jim O'Reilly for Crom the Destroyer. Again, there was 2 different artists who work in 2 different ways, and I have scripts in 2 different kinds of methods for different chapters. But anyways, my point being that there's 2 basic ways that everybody knows how to make scripts. If you know anything about comic history and the 2 big players, which are Marvel and DC. And the first is the DC method, which is a full script, even though it's much, much more of a full script than I actually would do myself. Even though I sometimes give panel layout, I would I would usually give panel layout anyways, just as this is how many panels are on this page, and this is basically the basically the layout that I would like. I usually just give it in a numbered form: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Basically, how many are on top, how many are in the middle, how many are in the bottom, if there's a small panel, things like that. But the DC method is actually much more intense than that, or the old DC method, because not only that, but they would not only tell the artist exactly what panels would go where, they would tell them exactly where the word balloons would go, all this kind of thing. So it's heavily, heavily directed by the writer. Whereas the Marvel method is the complete opposite. The Marvel method would be, it is a description of what is going to happen on this page and what needs to happen on this page. And then the artist would take all of his time and script the entire thing out, trying to figure out how to get it into the page with how many panels they would need, and also whatever layout they were going to come up with, whatever action they were going to come up with. And there wasn't even any script for dialogue, really. Um, all of the dialogue was written after the art was come in from the artist, and they would figure out how much they could usually get away with putting the dialogue in, and then the dialogue would be written last, which really is a bit bizarre if you ask me, although a bit bizarre, not entirely. um, but the thing is that I do basically now a hybrid of the two, because, well, just to let you know, also, with the Marvel method, they usually would instruct the artist that I need 30% of each panel to be free for dialogue. So they would give them enough room for dialogue. But the thing is, I try to do more of a hybrid system now. That is to say, I'll write a script which isn't too heavily detailed, as for some writers more than others. Since for the Valiant Heroes, there's three different scripts for four different scripts and four different artists for the four different books, basically, because three of them are the size of a floppy each, and they make up the entire graphic novel with the backup story, which is a short story. But anyways, links for those in the description. Um, yeah. So I did basically four books in four different ways, and I wrote a script which gave a lot of direction as to how many panels were on this page, what action was going to take place in each panel, how much dialogue is usually going to go into each panel, because I had the dialogue written already, because I'm a writer and these are the things that I would love to direct and love to do. And basically, I would wait for the art to come back from my artist, and then I would redo the dialogue, so that if there wasn't enough room, I would actually have to pare down my dialogue, which usually is a good thing, because if you're a writer, you always need to pare down your dialogue. It doesn't need to be that complicated. Me, even as a writer, and I love writing dialogue, it doesn't need to be that complicated. I have to say this to myself every time I have to cut out dialogue. This doesn't need to be here. But anyway, and then again, as I'm getting the lettered pages back from Eric right now, I'm looking and going, okay, he's putting in balloons here, 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 and here. It seems to flow better than what I originally had intended, because sometimes he will move them around from panel to panel if there's more room or less room for him. And then I will say, for instance, okay, we have a panel here which has very little dialogue in it now. Now I'm going to add some dialogue. So this is a hybrid of the Marvel and DC method. And the thing is that I find that best right now. It might change drastically in the future. And here's the thing: when going over, oh, yeah, here, I should be putting this in the background. Okay, we'll put this up in the background. Sorry, you just look at a cardinal in the background. My apologies. I'm so excited about this topic, actually, that I forgot to actually put anything up in the background. Let's see here. What I have for you for our background today is the Marvel, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Okay. This is a couple of pages from chapter 10. So it's almost, I think it's the second last or last chapter in the book, but it's all about panel layout. And the fun thing that I notice about a lot of what Marvel is trying to do in this old How to Do Marvel, How to Draw the Marvel Way, which was done in 72, I think, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, put that in the comments. But the fun thing is that I like to go over old things that I've read before, because I now know much more, and it fills in a lot of gaps, and I understand a whole lot more. But one of the great things is that if you look at this stuff that they're showing here, how to draw panels and art the Marvel way and how to lay out the Marvel way, you notice what they concentrate on is the action, always the action. And they have blocked out in some of these pictures here that you're looking at where the action is going to be, how much action there is, and they concentrate on those shaded areas, which are the action. This is the exact opposite of what they do right now within Marvel and the other companies. What they're doing now is looking at the negative space. So where Marvel and DC now, and I would say indie creators as well, are saying, let's look at the negative space and how we can fill that up. What Marvel used to do was, no, 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 we're not going to look at the negative space. Let's look at the positive space where all the action occurs. And then the negative space is there to be filled up by the dialogue, which is the way it should be. This is the thing, because this is something that I had never noticed before, but I noticed this time when going through this book, how to draw comics the Marvel way. Again, it's chapter 10 where you have panel layout. Why? Because it's just like drawing, and it's really, for Marvel anyways, a part of drawing. That's how you put the panel layouts in. But with drawing, if you're going to draw something, and again, as they go over here in this book, if you're going to draw something, you start with basically a stick figure, and then you fill in with some shapes, a basic body structure or basic, what is it, like backgrounds, or if there's a car there or a building or something like that, something that's moving. But you use basic shapes, and then you build on that and build on that and give it more and more texture, more and more detail. And that's the way that you typically are instructed by art instructors, anyways, old art instructors, to do things if you're going to draw something. And the same thing is there for panel layout, if you ask me. And that's why I think they put this chapter in at number 10. It's because you have to start with your panel layout as a stick figure and then get more and more complicated as you pull out more and more of what you want to do. And when I mean stick figure, I mean, as a writer, you're going to figure out how your comic is going to be presented. Who's your audience? Which is basically what Marvel says, okay, this is why we concentrate on the action, because people want action. If you're going to have a slice of life comic, we're going to concentrate on drama. So there's going to be a different way of panel layout. And within Marvel, again, as you're looking at these pages in the background, Marvel, the old way to do it was to concentrate on both drama and action at the same time and pull both of those out. This is why they're talking about in some of these panels, don't use flat angles, use a different angle, and this gives it drama. And this is exactly what they're talking about in these pages here that they're showing right now. The angles give it drama, the close-ups give it drama, and then that adds to the action, and the action pulls the reader in. Again, who's your audience? What do they want? So those are your stick figures for panel layout, and then you use those and bring out more and more of what your artist can do into the picture, what he can positively do with his pictures, and how he can bring out this action and everything else. And then once you understand that, and again, I now understand much better the way Renzo does it, and he's the one I've worked with the most. It is something that is going to give you much better ideas of how to lay out your panels and what to do with the panel layout if you're doing it as a writer. Because again, if you're a writer and an artist, you're doing the whole thing yourself. If you're a writer or you're an artist, then you're going to have to work with someone else, and you're going to have to figure out who's going to do the panel layout. Now, a writer most probably will want to do the panel layout, and the artist will also most times want to do the panel layout, depending on who's the heavy in the relationship of actually creating the book. So usually artists just write their own scripts anyways. But for me, for someone who is just a writer, I would like to direct the panel layout. Let me put that up again to show you those beautiful pages from How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. But again, I want to direct the action because everything to me is visual, and hopefully I've absorbed enough from reading comics that I can direct Renzo in a way that's not going to interfere with how he's going to want to express his art. And the fun thing is that I love Renzo's art, and I think honestly, I say Renzo is going to be the next George Perez, the next John Byrne. In 10, 15 years, that's who he's going to be. But the fun thing about working with Renzo is that I pretty much allow him a lot of free reign with what he's doing with his panel layouts and how he constructs what I'm trying to give him the script for in the panel layouts. Richard, your boy Zach over at Comics Matter, he does the exact opposite. He says to Renzo, do this, 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 and this, and Renzo comes back with pages and says, no, wrong, wrong, wrong. Redo this panel, redo that panel. I don't do that with Renzo, but I think the really great thing is that I don't have to do that with Renzo, in part because he's learning more and more every time he puts down a new panel, and him working with Richard is actually benefiting me because he gets all that instruction from Richard, and I think the other way around as well, because my free reign that I'm giving Renzo is actually allowing, possibly, I don't know, maybe Richard would not agree with this, but it's giving Renzo more of a feel as to how he himself wishes to express his art and deal with the writing in a better way that would reflect well on Richard's comics as well. So there's a bit of a give and take there, if you ask me. But anyways, this is again, I just love doing these Wednesday live streams because I love geeking out about comics. That's why I chose the title for this series as that, because honestly, when I think about how many things I've learned over the week, and that's just the week, not to mention the last 2 years about making comics and how this translates into how it is a more enjoyable read for me when I go back and read old comics, or how it is much more of a um, pleasure, really, to create comics now. It is something that I just want to get off my chest and tell people about. So that's about 20 minutes of me talking about panel layout. But is there anything else that I forgot to go over? No, basically, I think I went over everything. Let me see. So dramatic camera angles. That's what Marvel always says. Focus on your stick figure of your panel layout, which is who your audience is for. Then put in the drama, then put in the action. And as that starts to build up the body of what you're going to see on the page, then it gives you much better ideas as to your panel layout. Then within your panels, you do the same thing with the action, not the negative space, with the positive space itself. And that will give you much more of a better idea of how much you can put on a page and all this kinds of stuff. So I'm sure, again, I could do probably 5 videos about panel layout, and I'm probably going to do them, not in a row, but I'll do another one 6 months from now or 8 months from now or something like that, after I've learned so much more. Again, by working with people like Mike Gustovich and Renzo and Nick X and Jim O'Reilly and so many others, and even Eric Weathers, my letterer, because everybody has their own distinct way of creating comics. And that's, again, one of the things I love about making comics is how much of a collaboration it is, so that I can hand some things off to other people and watch them create off of my creation. It's beautiful to see. And again, like I said, when I got those lettered pages back from Eric, it just made me so emotional. And the same thing happened with Thomas Valiant. When I got those lettered pages back, to see the whole thing come together is it's I don't know, just honestly, you get dumbfounded. I do anyways when I see those things. I don't understand these current comic book professionals who say it's a chore to make comics, it's a job, I don't really enjoy it anymore. I don't see that at all. And I had a very short conversation with Richard at one point. It was just in the comments of one of his videos. I said, I just think that this is a miraculous thing. I mean, how can they not appreciate how much goes into making a comic and just enjoy it? And Richard was of the exact same mind. It's like, I know, I learn something new every day. It's a joy making comics and learning all there is to learn about making comics. So all right, I'm going to go over some of the comments here, see if you guys have any questions, and I will put that up in the background for the how to draw comics the Marvel way one more time at least. Because again, if you want to read some of the stuff in the background, I think you can actually read the entire thing on the Internet Archives. It's basically a library. as far as I know. So you can go over there and read it, just like it was a library book. I don't know if it's still in print. Anyways, if you want to go, it's a great read. Something if you're making comics or even someone who wants to appreciate comics more, go read that book. It's a joy, especially looking at all the beautiful art in it as well. All right, let's see who else is here and if we have any questions. Uh, First statement here is from Paulus, and he says again, as he's been saying over the last couple of weeks, and I agree, lettering is a lost art. Another video wouldn't bother me. I might do another video at some point. Yeah, lettering is a lost art, and one that I am more and more appreciative every time letter pages come back to me. Rex says, today's been a mixed up day. Good news. My new microphone that works fine. Bad news, I need new drawing tablet because my current one is cracked. I'll have to reintroduce myself to pencils and paper. Yeah, that's one of the things I thanks for reminding me, Rex. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about as well. One of the chapters after this, I think it's chapter 11 and 12 in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, is draw yourself a comic page. And again, this is one of the things that I talk about every once in a while. When I talked to Mike Barron and did that interview with him about 6, 8 months ago, he said, yeah, as a writer, you need to be able to sketch out a page. At the very least, do the stick figures so that you know, and you can present that to your artist if you want him to do something specific. And again, that's exactly I didn't understand, like I knew that was good advice, and I'm trying to take that advice more and more. But to think about it in panel layout terms and this positive space versus the negative space where it's supposed to be something in the background that is blank so you can put all of your dialogue in. Yeah, to understand basic panel layouts so you can sketch them out, that is something I would say almost necessary if you're just a writer. Mike was exactly right on that. And who who would know? I mean, who would wonder that Mike Barron, what has he been writing comics for 40 years now, would be an oracle of wisdom. Yeah, that's something that I should have guessed at. Anyways, I'm sure there's more that I wanted to talk about there, but scrolling down to see if there's any more comments. Da, 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 Paula says again, traditional is more fun to Rex. Yeah, again, I like pencil and paper, so I'm trying to do that more and more. Stress level is here. How you doing, stress level? Let's see who else we got here. Bethial Games. Is that how you say the first? It's Beth, Yal. So, how you doing? Let's see. Rex says, I work with a loose script myself since I'm both writer and artist, so I have a good idea of what I want. Now I'm considering trying the Marvel method. Well, the thing is that it's good to, I'd say, if you're the writer and the artist, the Marvel method would just be do your well, honestly, I've seen videos where people say don't do this. They say write a script first and then do your art if they're an artist and the writer. And then again, you got Marvel here saying, no, do the art first, concentrate on the action, and then you have to, at the very least, keep in mind you need at least 30% of the panel for your dialogue and then add the script. So yeah, I don't know exactly about how that would work as a writer. For me, that would be something bizarre. But if you're a writer or an artist, it might actually work. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael says Japanese manga has a manga called Four Koma, and it's a comic book where each page has only 4 panels, and this style is mostly used for comedy manga. I actually did basic panel counts and just of different kinds of manga, and usually I would say the basic layout is 4 to 6 panels per page for manga because it is a smaller page. As I usually say, for North American comics, it's probably 6 to 9, which is your basic um, layout for a page. But again, it's different for many different situations and many different kinds of comics, obviously. But yeah, manga has its own way of dealing with things, and they have their own panel layout. Here's a question. I'll throw it to the chat. I know that, again, if you have any idea, I just have the basic bare knowledge of what feng shui is and how things are supposed to work within Oriental cultures, as in you're supposed to arrange things in certain ways. And I have watched some videos about how manga they think is laid out in these more Eastern methods of things like feng shui. But I myself would not be able to pick out whether it is or not. Does anybody who is a avid manga reader and knows more about these things, could they pick out panel layout that actually is much more in line with that kind of Eastern thinking? I don't know. It's an interesting question. And glad you brought up something tangential to it, Michael, so that I could ask that question. Let's see. Sound Engraver is here. How you doing, Sound Engraver? As I always say, go over to Sound Engraver's channel if you want to. Go and subscribe to a channel that talks about some of the things I talk about, but in a more musical sphere. Just go on over and take a gander at what Sound Engraver has. You might be pleasantly surprised. Let's see who else is here. Pedro is here. How you doing, Pedro? He says he's finally early. Taz is here as well with a super chat for £5. Thank you very much, Taz. I love the fact that I get super chats. I never expect a super chat from anybody, and I never go into a live stream expecting anything except for a good conversation. So I am most pleasantly surprised and must profusely thank you and everybody else who gives super chats. So thank you, Taz. Scrolling down, Taz has a comment. He says, "Hey RJ, as always, great to be here where logic falls in place." well, actually, again, so many comments just giving me good ideas about what I wanted to talk about and forgot to do. Thank you, Taz. Yeah, uh, honestly, this is one of the things that I think uh I think it's Stan Lee. Yeah, it's Stan Lee who wrote How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. That's one of the things he talks about. When I'm talking about, go with basic stick figures as your panel layout and try to figure out how things go from there. He's talking about a rational development of the thought into a way that becomes clearer and clearer, which is a logical and rational way of thinking. So he even talks about it in those terms, not saying logic and reason, but he talks about it in the terms of, you have to bring out a understanding of where things go and how that's going to fit into your storytelling, all that kinds of stuff. So yeah, I would applaud Stan Lee for his comments, especially in this chapter about that I'm showing you about panel layout that talks about that exact thing. Let's see. Scrolling down, Rex says, I actually have a copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, both physical and PDF. If I ever see it again in a bookstore or in a used bookstore, I will snatch it up because I only have the PDF copy. And that's it. Let's see, scrolling down. Calliope is here, cursing the fact that I don't know. Calliope, I think you're a guy. Calliope says, I'm late by 13 minutes. So he's late. He has to speed it up by 2 times. Listen to me on 2 times. Sometimes I go a little bit fast. I don't know. Some people tell me I do. That might be detrimental to the way that you actually understand what I have to say. RJ sounds funny, manic at 2 times speed. I think I sound funny, manic most of the time. But thank you for that, Calliope. Let's say Pedro says, nice storyboard. This is the Stan Lee, and I think it's John Buscema who's doing the storyboarding here. So yeah, beautiful storyboard. I especially like this one showing you the difference between dynamic poses and camera angles and non-dynamic. The non-dynamic is on the left, the dynamic is on the right. And again, here you have something which doesn't have a whole lot of action, so it's just showing you the dynamic camera angles and how it makes it better. Stan Lee would say, as he does in the book, the stuff on the left is okay and it'll do, but the stuff on the right, it is what you actually want. Let's put that back up again. Again, it's a beautiful book, and I don't mind plugging it again and again. Back to the comments, and if I can find where I left off because it jumped on me again. Let's see. Where was I? Here we are. Sound Engraver says it's a nice looking storyboard. Yes. Stan Lee and John Schema, consummate professionals. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, I forgot about sound effects. Vaz says sound effects were more present in older comics. In Japanese manga, they are also being used a lot. Why do they mostly disappear from current day American comics? Well, there's a couple of reasons for that, Vaz. Good question, actually, because one of the things, again, sound effects is something that sometimes my artist put in and sometimes my letterer puts in. And again, the artist, like Renzo, would put in sound effects in some places where I would ask him to, but then when I get the finalized art back, I would say, we're going to have to put in a sound effect here because for me, sound effects are very much a way of indicating something that is not entirely clear within the panel, although there are different methods of using them, certainly. But yeah, the reasons why they stop being used. First of all, within Crom the Destroyer for me, yeah, anyways, I'm trying to mimic the old Marvel Conan. So there are very few to little sound effects because that's exactly how they did that within the old Conan books. They wanted to differentiate those books from the rest of Marvel, so they said no sound effects. Well, they do have screams and things like that as a sound effect instead of a word balloon, but there's no bat, pow, boom, all that kind of things for sound effects. So there's one way in which it was gotten rid of. Secondly, I know that when you had Jim Shooter move over to Valiant Comics, which was um, his company at that time, and he was actually running the entire show, he basically outlawed both sound effects and thought balloons, which I think was a really, really bad idea. Both of those things I use in my comics. Again, I won't be using them so much for sound effects in Crown the Destroyer because, again, trying to go back to that old feel of the Conan the Barbarian for the Marvel uh, books. But anyway, yeah, so that would be another reason why they started to peter out. And then after that, you got the newer people coming into Marvel, your John Quesadas and the newer people that you have there right now. And they want to make comics look more, as they would say, professional, as in graphic novels, so that they call them a graphic novel, so that they don't have to hang their heads in shame saying, I work on comics, because that's what they do. These people don't like comics, unfortunately, and they're making comics for the big two. Yeah, they think they need to make it much more highbrow, and so they have to get rid of sound effects and they have to get rid of thought balloons for the most part. I've only ever seen one comic in the current Marvel last 3-4 years use thought balloons, and that would be Runaways. But anyway, that's the reason why they're pretty much forbidden right now to use those things, just because they look too comic book ish and they don't want to make comic books. They want to make graphic novels, even if they're in comic book form, because a graphic novel sounds much more mature and can be sold to a mature audience, or at the very least, can be sold to a group of people that you're talking to, as in, I'm doing something much more mature than just creating comics. It's all a idiotic way of looking at sound effects and thought balloons, if you ask me. So I think they need to come back. I am with you 100%, Faz. They need to come back in American comics. That is part of the tradition of American comics. We should have more sound effects, and that is part of panel layout. So sorry for going on so long about that, but I love when someone gives me a comment where I can just answer to my heart's content. Sound Engraver says, it means a lot to hear how overwhelmed you feel when your art comes to life. I feel the same about music. I'm glad to see that I'm not the only one. Thank you very much, Sound Engraver. Let's see. Let's see. Buffy says, I read this Drawing Comics the Marvel Way too. Really good stuff. It is indeed. Is indeed. Let's see. Uh, Pedro says, good to know to order a comic good to know to order a comic to an artist. Well, again, I try to work with my artist as best as possible. I'm not going to especially being an indie creator who has my own basic imprint. Um, I'm not going to track down a artist and finally convince him to work with me and then say no, you have no say in any of this. That's not what I'm going to do. Part of what I am trying to do is to give the artist a platform as well, so that they can themselves work in a method that is better to them. And again, for me, I'm still learning. I'm not telling you this is how to make comics from an oracle on high. I'm just learning. So to learn from the artist and what they can do and how they can do it and how we might be able to do it better. Yeah, that is something that needs to be done for me, anyways. Let's see, scrolling down, Final Fantasy is here and says, I'm learning about doing the DC method because of the DC Comic Guide to Writing by Danny O'Neill. That is another book that I should get back to. So yeah, I want to compare the two actually. But honestly, it all depends on, especially if you're a writer, how much you're, uh, how much, I don't know how you can put it, how much leeway you can give your artist. And usually that depends on how well you know your artist, all that kinds of thing. But for the old DC, and this is why Marvel really took over within the time where Stan Lee is writing how to create comics the Marvel way. They were very flat angles for a lot of stuff. It wasn't dynamic at all. You would get a beautiful cover with dynamism and action and everything else, but the inside panel layouts would not actually follow that same method. Oh, that's the thing I wanted to talk about Logic and Reason, where Stan Lee talks about it. He's talking about the fact that, look, you're doing sequential art, and the sequential art is taking you from panel to panel, and you're supposed to fill in the gaps with the action. So, of course, your action is something that you need to concentrate on. So, again, that is basically your second or third layer of how you're going to put panel layouts in is, again, concentrate on your action, but you also have to keep in mind how the action differs from panel to panel. And then that's going to determine where your panels go within your page and how many panels you can get on a page, all that kinds of thing. Which again, for Marvel, they left up to the artists almost entirely. Let's see, scrolling down. Pedro says the two comma manga slash comic is used as literally the method to subvert expectations. Okay. To change basically, I think what you're saying is to change the layout from a comic style in a comic to a manga one is to subvert expectations. I never heard that, but it could be. It's an interesting thing to look into. Let's see. Puffy says, RJ, you're on your way to becoming the next comic book legend. I don't know about that. I just love to learn, quite honestly. And I always wanted to be a writer, and this is my chance. And I'm going to do as much as possible to learn more and more continually. And no matter how many years I do this, and hopefully it's going to be years, I'm going to learn more and more. So maybe someday I will become a comic book legend, but it's only because I'm working off of the good advice of so many other comic book legends. So Buffy continues and says, your love for superheroes, the nature of craft, and so on is extremely contagious. Please keep up these videos. We need this. I plan to do a lot more of these videos. I think just I'm going to do them as long as my channel exists, hopefully, because I tried so many other things to do for videos and they just didn't work. But I love doing these videos about how to make comics, and it does prompt me. It's like, I got to do another video this week. What am I going to do it on? And it prompts me to go back and read something or delve into something that I haven't done before to learn something new about comics. So that's it. It's a good kick in the pants for me, anyways. So yeah, I love doing these Wednesday night streams. Calliope says, it is arrogance or merely ignorance that convinces modern comic book artists to ignore the lessons that they could learn from artists that created the genre they now occupy. completely agree with everything you just said there, Calliope. Um, and the thing is that it all stems from the fact that you had well, this is my take on it, anyways. You had the people who were running comics more and more becoming these quote unquote progressive um, people who were in a silo, a progressive silo, and they listened to only themselves. This is something that studies have shown that the more right leaning you are, the actual, it would sound counterintuitive. Most people think the more right leaning you are, the less you listen to people, but no, the more right leaning you are, the more you actually listen to people so that you can understand what's going on. The more left leaning you are, the less you're going to listen to anybody else, and you're going to be in your own little silo, listening to, if anybody, only the people who are on your side. And this is what happened with comics. You got more and more of these people in, and then you had basically so many of them that they gained control, and they didn't listen to anyone else, and they didn't listen to the numbers and understand why their sales were tanking, and they thought it was because they weren't connecting to their audience because they weren't being progressive enough. And that's when they decided, or at the very least, John Casada decided. And again, this is straight from the mouth of people from Marvel when they're talking about it in interviews. He decided we're going to make a break from the old way of making comics, and we're going to make them in an entirely different way. And again, this is the progressive arrogance that you just talked about there, Calliope, and their misunderstanding of the situation that no, if you're in a bad spot, what you should do is go back to fundamentals and not abandon them completely. So, yeah, I agree. Stress Level says, hey, RJ, have you ever seen the 90s Spider Man fan film from Dan Poole? I just discovered it recently and it's amazing. No, I have not. Is there, I don't know, where did you discover it? Is it someplace where I can get it? I don't like to pirate things. So, if it's on YouTube or Daily Motion or stuff like that, I would assume there are copyright. What is it? Money going to somebody who actually owns the film. There is, because honestly, there's some channels now popping up on YouTube who seem to, for I don't know, what is it, like creature features. It's basically a Saturday night old bad movie or a B movie Saturday night that you'd find on, I don't know, used to find on like USA Network or things like that. But they've been up for like 2 years, 3 years for some of these movies. So they must be paying royalties to some of these people, or at the very least sharing the revenue stream or something with them. So I assume that if it's on these platforms, that I can actually watch it without pirating it. That's why I'm going off on that spiel. If you can tell me where I could find this fan film. Scrolling down, let's see. Nick has a beautiful comment here. Thank you, Nick. He says, I'm blown away by how Crumb turned out. Neat to see how it all gets done. As a writer and an artist, thinking about all the work that would be required is exhausting. Well, the trick I would say is like any great artist. I'm sure, Nick, if you are an artist, you started from very humble beginnings and you started out probably thinking that it would be exhausting to actually get that level of detail that you actually wanted. And it took you doing things that were fundamental and building on them until you became a better artist. And that's the exact same thing that you have to do with writing. That's the exact same thing you have to do with creating a comic. Work on the fundamentals, build on the small things that you have right. And it's not exhausting. It's actually thrilling, if you ask me, to see everything come together. All right, scrolling down, let's see. Final Fantasy says, I wrote the script for my graphic novel Light and Darkness, but soon after the script is written and then edited, then the art will come in, but first creating a storyboard. Oh, again, that's another good method of storyboarding. Um, it is a method that, again, it would depend on your artist, really. If a lot of these artists that are trying to break into comics right now on the indie level anyways are people who have worked for firms doing basically corporate art for different kinds of things, so they would be very good at storyboarding. So that would be a very good method, and I think it would be something that would work very well with the Marvel method. So that's great to hear. Final Fantasy. All right, so let's see. Let's see. Vaz has. I'm gonna hold on a second, Vaz. I'm gonna put this back up again in the background. Let me show some covers again, and I'll show you. Let's see. Let's see. No, I'll show you some great panel layout from some great panels. How's that? Just to give you a bit of a change in pace. So Vaz says, let's see if I can get back to it. 1 second. Da, da, da. Scrolling up, trying to find out where I was. Oh, here I am. That says, it's not really layout related, but I saw a post last week by your boy Zach about having parentheses in the middle of a word bubble in older X-Men. Should that be done? Parentheses in the middle of a word bubble. I don't know. I don't remember older X-Men using parentheses. You might use something which is, I don't know what you'd call it. They used to have this old thing that if you want to put in something like a sob, there would be basically an asterisk, like half an asterisk at the first of it and half an asterisk at the end. It would be like three little ticks. I've seen that before, but I don't remember seeing parentheses, quite honestly. And I don't think they would work well um, within the word bubbles for any genre. So I'd have to actually see this to see what he's talking about, because I don't know what he's talking about off the top of my head. And honestly, there's one of the things that I used to do with my writing a long time ago when I would just give it to friends, and a lot of my friends would say, "Stop using so many semicolons. I don't understand what a semicolon is for." So you're confusing me with all of these semicolons. Grammatically, semicolon should go there. And the thing is that if you're working for an audience who is just a casual reader, then they're not going to want to actually be stumped by grammar. So I had to get rid of so many semicolons and just learn how to write things in a different way. So I don't think, again, that's exactly the same with word bubbles. I don't think parentheses would work if you ask me. So let's see, scrolling down, scrolling down. We got 24 people in the chat. That's great. Buffy says, with that being said, RJ, in your American mythos of Spider-Man, you had mentioned don't that you don't owe your adopted mother, no, she's not adopted, just my mother, as much as your birth mother. No, I don't remember saying that at all. I don't have an adopted mother. I just have a mother. Can you elaborate on what you said? I'm not familiar with what you're saying at all, Puffy. Honestly, I just have my mother, and that's it. So not entirely sure what you got out of that video. So scrolling down, let's see. Rex says, RJ, in terms of how we sound, plenty of people tell me that I sound like an old time radio host from the 30s or 40s, even though I'm currently 32 years old. Yeah, I mentioned this before, Rex. I was in high school and people would tell me I sound like an old man, not just within the way I talk, but also the timbre of my voice, I guess you would say. But I do use a lot of old kinds of, we'll say, oh, I don't know. What do you call it? Idioms, if you want to put it like that? Things like that. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Calliope says Calliope is a Greek muse slash goddess of epic poetry and eloquence. I admire that she stands for, and superheroes. I admire what she stands for, and superheroes could be considered modern epic poetry. Hence, I am attracted to this community. Very good to hear. I always confuse the muses. So I do know Calliope, but how many others? There's 9 muses, right? I confuse them so much. But yeah, I guess epic poetry would be, I don't know, comics might be considered epic poetry. That's something I actually wanted to talk about in one of my videos. I never got to. I might come back and talk about that. It's about not only I think it's the nature of the English language that really makes story into what it is, and how we actually write so many stories instead of poetry. But anyways, I won't get into that tonight. Let's see. Let's see. I'm not sure if this comment is for me, but Pedro says, because there is not that many action seeds, that's why, which is lame. Well, I take it he's talking about modern comics, but I agree. They are lame. Let's see. Samuel, how you doing? Samuel in the comments has a question. Have you ever started writing and the story just pulls you in a direction that you didn't expect it to? I ask because after years of struggling, now my writing is done that way. I take it he meant to say. Um, yeah, exactly. A lot of the times I have a really good idea of what I'm going to write. The whole thing is scripted out in my head. But other times, like right now, I'm writing another Crom the Destroyer basic text story. So, if you don't know, for Crom the Destroyer, link for it is in the description. My fantasy graphic novel, which is a return to form for low fantasy. It's basically going. What I do is I'm trying to recreate a combination of Cull and Conan and Solomon Kane by going back to the early Celtic mythology that those characters were created from, and that's what Crom the Destroyer is. Again, you can order the graphic novel through the link in the description. But I've also have a text story, which you can also order on the campaign page for Crom the Destroyer. You can't get it as a part of Anvil Iron Age magazine number 2. That perk has been taken down since we closed, and that book itself, they were on Fund My Comic. They have also taken their campaign down because it's done now. But I wrote a story for that book, which is a short story, and it's called Morning Light. And again, um, if you had ordered through me or through Fund My Comic, Anvil Iron Age magazine number 2, you'll get that short story. But I've been continuing to write short stories for the Crom universe at the same time. So I did a second short story that I submitted to Anvil Iron Age magazine number 3 to see if they will publish that as well. And I'm also writing now a third story, which I might just keep to submit to Anvil, or I might submit it to other places, or I might be publishing it in some kind of format on my channel. I want to write more and more of these stories. But, anyways, the reason why I'm saying that is because I don't have, with each of these short stories, since they are so short, because Anvil likes short stories, even if they are short between 800 and 1500 words, they would rather be closer to the 800 so they can get more stories in their book. But since they are so short, I don't script out the entire thing in my head. What I do is I have a basic outline of what I want to do, and for this current story that I'm writing, it's basically centered around a road. And so I started writing this story and it took on a life of its own. It went in a completely different direction than I originally intended it to do. So yeah, for some books, yes, for others, no. Um, and it all depends on what kind of story I'm writing, how soon it has to be done, all these kinds of things. So it is a valid way to write a story, Samuel. I would very much encourage people to learn to do it both ways. Let it, let's see. So Samuel continued his statement by saying he's trying to catch up with it. Yeah, he's trying to catch up with the story. Yeah, I agree completely. It is a good way to tell a story. Let's see, scrolling down. Rex says also earlier when I asked on Twitter, X, how you pick which mythological interpretations to work with, I mainly meant your version of Thor. Sorry for not being clear about that. I go back to, well, I usually start with historical accuracy. So we have the earliest compiled stories for Thor is Snorri, and I go back to those for the Thor character that I'm working with. And for those stories, he's not a hero. He might have been a hero to the Vikings at the time, but you can see he's not a hero. He's very villainous. And so I went back to that original basis of the character. That's why I say for the rampaging Thor, that's why it's called the rampaging Thor. He's basically attached to or becomes attached to a Donald Blake like character. I'm going to put some of these stuff up in the background. I'll do that slideshow one more time. Um, and so he's the rampaging part of that Jekyll and Hyde duo. So that's what I'm doing for Thor. But I'm also using plenty of other examples of mythology. I thought actually, Rex, you were talking about Crom because I have harpies there. Those are very much Greek mythological figures within some of the stories that I've written that I just talked about. I have some basic Celtic mythological figures as well. Not, gods like Thor or anything like that, but very basic creatures that you would find in the Celtic mythology, things like that. So I like to go back originally to original source material, primary source material, and then bounce off from there. If you're asking, let's see. Um, Calliope, I'm not sure if this is for me, but I'll read it anyways. Funny is Greeks name their boys after goddesses like Artemis and Calliope, but I am a woman and I try to identify with the goddess of eloquence. That's one of the things I am not eloquent. I have what muse is it? I'm not entirely sure what muse it is of inspiration. Again, I get them confused so much. But eloquence is not one of my strong suits. More power to you, Calliope. I always think of things in D&D terms, as in for myself and other people. You basically have a D&D chart. Eloquence would go under what is it? Charisma, and charisma is my dump stat. Unfortunately. Uh, let's see. But I make up for it hopefully with other things. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Yes, Rex says graphic novels are comics as far as I'm concerned. I am as well. I use the two interchangeably, but you will see if you listen to so many podcasts as I do from Marvel, they don't see comics and graphic novels as the same thing at all, and they don't want to. Let's see. Um, Stress level says it's like saying you're an influencer rather than saying you're a YouTuber. Yeah. Saying you want to work on graphic novels instead of comics. I say graphic novel just to let people know that it's going to be a thicker book. And so they would know it's a graphic novel. So it's, 60 to 80 pages. When I would say, for me, anyways, when someone says comic, I'm usually thinking, you know, 22 to 30 pages. So that's why I use the different terminologies for me, anyways. Let's see, scrolling down. Oh, I got a lot of comments to get through here. We're already an hour in. Rex says, to be honest, how you describe the attitude about sound effects reminds me of the annoying preteen who tries too hard to be taken seriously. Yeah. Um, that's what I talked about a little bit in my Saturday video, because that's what these quote unquote progressive people are. They think, well, they're children who have never grown up. They think they're teenagers and they want to stay that way because they think that people are born innocent and they get corrupted by external institutions. So they want to stay innocent and don't get corrupted. So they have to stay children. So that's what they are. They're children, and they're purposefully trying to be inert children throughout their entire lives, which is ridiculous. Let's see. Uh, Game says the Marvel Conan the Barbarian and the Savage Sword of Conan have a few sound effects because this makes them more serious. This was also true for L. Sprague de Camp's view of heroic fiction. I don't know. That was Roy Thomas's way. He put that specifically in that he wanted to do it that way, and how he was going to, how he informed Stanley that he wanted to break it off from the rest of the Marvel comics, make it something a little more Robert E. Howard-ish. I guess you would put it that way. Let's see. Samuel says, I highly recommend Denny O'Neil How to Write Comics, though the panels they use are so good I had to really concentrate on the words to even learn anything. I really need to have a pencil and paper with me when I do these live streams, because people give me so many things that I want to actually read or watch or things like that, and they just go out of my head whenever I actually am done with the stream. So thank you for reminding me, Samuel. Denny O'Neil. And I will write that down somewhere and get back to that. Let's see what else we got here. Uh, Tony says, "Did you ever watch the whole wide the whole wide world? It's based on the book by Price. It's about her relationship with Robert E. No, I have not. I have not seen that at all. So again, something else to stick in my memory, but will probably fall out. There's so many Robert E. Howard things. I actually just want to concentrate on the Robert E. Howard stories because it's such a pleasure to try to write in that style. Stress Level says, I saw it originally from an edit and hunted it down and found it freely available on YouTube. It's called Green Goblin's Last Stand. Okay, I'll go look it up. Again, wish I had a piece of paper and pencil to write this down. Scrolling down. Vaz says, what do you think of the vertical scrolling layout that webtoons use? That kind where one chapter issue is one big vertical image. Ugh, I detest it, Vaz. Honestly, I might learn to actually, I don't know. I'm so used to physical copies of comic books. It just irks me to no end. Um, I don't like it, and I just don't like reading things on the computer, or my phone in any way. I need something bigger than a phone to read, anyways. But no, scrolling down and just reading one after another, it seems to not for my. This is my first take on it, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll have better ideas about it later, but it seems to break some of the fundamental principles of sequential art in allowing everything to bleed together in a way that doesn't need to have a break at all during the entire story. Now, that might work for someone who is a master storyteller, but for someone who is not a master storyteller, let's just put it that way, and most people writing a lot of these webtoons, and certainly for the people at Marvel's Infinity Comics who are writing such things like that, because that's the way they work, it is just horrific and it does not work. So again, in the hands of a master storyteller, it might work. But again, the limitations of comic book art and how you can only have so many things per page is one of the beautiful things about comics, that you can do something when you don't understand the entire thing and it gives you some leeway. But when you do understand the page better, you can use it to its full effect. So again, it will correct some of your faults by having that panel break and that page break. But at the same time, when you understand it, like we're looking at right now, with the Neil Adams stuff from X-Men, yeah, he's a master at that, and he uses panel breaks in a masterful way. So I don't like it, Baz. See if I can get some more of these comments before I have to go. Pedro says there's a lot of entire movies on YouTube. How they are still on, I don't know. Me either. Again, I would just say that they must have some kind of way that they get um, money to the original creators. That's my guess. Buffy says, I'll stop pirating new movies when the companies start making things worth my money. Well, if they're not worth your money, they're not worth your time. That's my philosophy on it. So let's see, scrolling down. Scrolling down, see what else, any more comments for me. There's a comment from Tony, but I don't think it's me. Maybe it is for me. Maybe it isn't. He says, what do you think of Tom Hardy's Bane interpretation? Honestly, I never liked Bane as a character. All respect in the world to just one second. Let me put up how to draw comics the Marvel way again. Um, to Chuck Dixon. I've talked to Chuck. I talked to Chuck about doing a comic together. Um, he didn't quite take the bait for that, but um, again, all respect to Chuck. He is a great storyteller and a man of wisdom beyond his years. But I never liked Bane as a character, and quite honestly, Tom Hardy's Bane actually made me like the character a little more. So that's my take on that. Scrolling down. Buffy says, I really, really wish I had the money to go get Thomas Valiant RJ. One day I will when I get older. Great to hear. We will be selling, well, they won't be first editions anymore, but we will be selling this for a long time. So hopefully, as many people as want to get it can get it eventually. Sound Engraver says, I think it was the distinction between a mother and a mother figure with that Spider-Man video you recently did. Oh, I was just talking about Spider-Man, not talking about me. I was talking about how Spider-Man had a mother figure in Aunt May, how she wasn't a mother. But for me, yeah, I just have a mother. I don't have a mother figure. I, if that was the distinction. Let's see. Comments that are people talking to each other in the comments. Vaz says about parentheses. For the parentheses, it was a community post about some Claremont X-Men. Here's one bubble. He's desperately afraid of that much, I sense, but of what? And seeking safety. Honestly, even for Chris Claremont, that doesn't work for me. And that would probably be one of the later Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont, he didn't go off the rails in the later X-Men, but he certainly did things that would tick me off. And his giant word balloons were one of them, and this might have been another. So I think earlier Claremont is better Claremont, if you ask me. So Puffy clarifies and says, I'm sorry, RJ, I wasn't referring to your relationship with your mother. I was speaking about the distinction you made between a mother and a mother figure. So I was just talking about basically how you have a natural, we'll say a natural right to give honor to your mother. It is something that comes through the human connection of being a mother and child, but it's not there for a mother figure. You might owe respect to your mother figure, but not the same as you would to an actual mother. And it just has to do with nature. And that's really, uh, really honestly, it's honor your father and your mother, not honor your father and your mother figure. And that's basically where I come with that. Let's see. Uh, I'm not sure, Tony, if you're asking me this question. Did I ever read 2000 AD's Slain? No, I didn't. 2000 AD is not something I terribly got into very much. So, no. Let's see. Puffy clarifies a little more, saying, when you were talking about Spider-Man One More Day, one of the reasons why Peter was wrong was because he didn't owe his mother figure enough to save her. Could you elaborate on that? Well, because, well, first of all, you don't, I'm sorry, but what I talked about there was, even if it was his mother, I'm sorry, if you have to choose between your wife and your mother, you choose your wife because you have actually sworn a solemn oath to your wife that you will protect her. Even though you do owe honor to your mother, you have never sworn a solemn oath to your mother to protect her. And you want to protect your mother, and you should do so at every turn. But if it comes down to your mother or your wife, you protect your wife because you made an oath. And that changes the entire way you're going to have to live your life. Every sworn oath that you, especially a sworn oath, which most of marriage is, before whatever it is, the highest authority that you would see in your life, and most people see that as God. When you swear a solemn oath like that, yeah, you fundamentally change your lot in life, and you have to fulfill that oath. It has to do with honor and virtue and everything else that I'm always talking about. So yeah, you owe your wife a debt of honor that is greater than what you owe your mother because you have sworn a solemn oath to her within your vows to protect her. And that's why you would, if it comes down to the choice of who do you save, your mother or your wife, you choose your wife. Let's see. Scrolling down. I will put this up again one more time. See if I can get down to some of the comments. Scrolling up again. Let's see if I can get back to where I was. Pedro says, RJ, what personification of D What personification of dead, I'm not sure if you meant to say dead there, think is the best representation of the concept itself? Any comic culture religion is valid to answer. Not sure what you're trying to say there, Pedro. I think there might be an autocorrect or something that's I don't understand your question, quite honestly. Let's see. Scrolling down, Taz says, oh, he's talking to, he says, Fletcher Hanks is an amateur. I had his unfiltered versions in the few stories he worked on. He plotted, drew, wrote. All these ideas came from one person from the Golden Age. What do you think of his works? You'd have to give me, I am so bad with names, Taz, you'd have to give me some of the books that he worked on for me to actually answer that question. Um, I'm very much more the story person. Names elude me so many times. But Golden Age artists were men of many talents. So again, I'd have to know more specifically about what you're asking. Let's see. Let's see. Samuel says, I just double checked my bookshelf. It's specifically called the DC Comics Guide to Writing Comics. Thank you very much, Samuel. The DC Comics Guide to Writing Comics. Carly is in the chat. How you doing, Carly? I don't think I've seen you here before. Have you publicly disavowed white supremacy yet? If not, why? Carly is always stirring the pot. Uh-huh. Very, very good, Carly. I just live my life and try to be as virtuous as possible. I'll leave it at that. uh, nice to see uh, different viewpoints in my chat. Let's put it that way. Mud is here. How you doing, Mud? He says, "Hey RG, how you doing, Mud? Nice to see you here in the chat again." Tony is here. Let's see. Tony says, "I completely agree with you on Bane." Um, let's see. Scrolling down to the last of the chat, I think. Rex says, controversial opinion, but I don't think that the whole mutants as an allegory for oppressed minorities thing works because of the superpowers which can be used to fight back. That's a good point. I had never thought of that. But yeah, that's a good point. I don't think they're really an allegory for oppressed minorities, or they didn't begin that way. And they're just trying to put that on the history of it to make themselves sound good right now. Let's see who else we got in the chat. Gregory's here. How you doing, Gregory? Nice to see you here in the chat. Gregory does Demon Gun. Is that correct? No. What is it? Gun Demon. I think that is his book. Scrolling down. Oh, my chat just jumped on me. Give me a second to catch up with where I am. Mutt says, RJ, how do how do describe the current comic age? Comicsgate, Iron Age, others, thanks. More and more I'm describing it as Iron Age. Honestly, the reason why, I don't know. I think we should move into the fourth age. That's why I called my channel the fourth age, because I want to go back to heroes. I would like to see a return to heroism. And funny enough, the fourth age, which is also called the Age of Heroes, is also called the Iron Age. So that's why I'm more and more leaning towards the Iron Age. Although I got no problem with using Comicsgate as well. Scrolling down, let's see. Puffy says, yes, you're right about the oath to your wife, which is something we were discussing. Greg says, on a base animal level, to continue your genetic line, you choose your mate. Your mother already did her part to continue the genetic line. Oh, you can look at it that way, I suppose. Choose to save your mate over your mother. Yes. And all right. I think I'm going to get these last couple of comments in here and we'll get going. I've been talking for an hour and a half or an hour and 20 minutes. All right. I think he meant death, not dead. So I don't even remember what the comment was now. What version of dead of death do I use? I don't have a version of death. Not in my comic universe, anyways. You just die. I don't have a version of death. Not that I know of. I haven't come up with one, and I don't really plan to use one. That's not a comment for me, so I will take that off the screen. Let's see. Pedro says, yes, it was death. Sorry. I don't I don't really. There are so many conflicting ideas about the character of death that, and people, quite honestly, most people don't know the difference between them. So, eh, I don't think I'll use character or a death. Death as a character. Let's see. Let's see. Carly says, "Thank you." Not entirely sure what for, Carly, but you gave me a good laugh with your absurd question. So. Uh, That's fine by me. A question mark is here. How are you? What other art slash comic guides, cheat sheets do you know about besides Wally Woods? Thanks. So again, Wally Woods, again, the one we've been talking about tonight, which is How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which is a basic one, but really, really good. And Pedro, I think who has told me, no, somebody told me in the comments also to add to that list. How to Draw Comics the DC Way, actually. It's not the title for it. Let me scroll up, see if I can figure out where it, uh, where it is. The DC Comics Guide for Writing Comics. And I'm sorry, who was it? It was Samuel that added that to the list. And yeah, so those are three very basic ones. Any other ones to put on the list right now? I can't think of off the top of my head, so I would start with those, quite honestly. But I'm sure there's many more. Although Wally Wood has, or sorry, not Wally Wood. It's Will Eisner. Sorry, Will Eisner has more than one. So well, I'm just going to go over some of those right now, and those are a lot of what the basics are that you need to know and understand. So I would say that's enough for now. All right, so let's see. Scrolling down, see if I can get to the end of the comments. Greg says, every Marxist and Maoist PSYOP can be easily debunked with basic logic because the PSYOPs are designed to oppose reality. That's a lot of what I'm talking about in my Saturday videos. So yeah. Let's see. Rex says, oh, sorry, I got to pull this up on the main screen. Stanley outright said that the oppression allegory was never part of the equation when he and Jack Kirby made the X-Men. He was just used the whole mutant thing as a convenient excuse for superpowers. That's what I read as well. From I think it was one of the books that Stanley did or something that I have read of his. Let's see. Scrolling down to the last of these comments. Mutt, I'm not sure if this comment is for me. He says, I'm glad to catch up with you live. Been enjoying your videos for a long time. Glad to hear that, Mutt. Thank you very much. And Greg is responding to Mutt. So let's see if we have any more comments. No, we don't. And we've gotten to the end. I want to thank everyone for showing up. We had, I don't know, about 29 people at the height of the chat. So thank you very much for everybody showing up. I love doing these Wednesday night live streams just to talk about how many fun things I've learned over the course of the week that I've learned about comics and how to make comics. So the links for my comics, my graphic novels are in the description. By my two superhero graphic novels, Thomas Valiant and the Valiant Heroes, can still be ordered from the Valiant Hero Indiegogo page, and my upcoming the book that I'm working on right now, which is my return to form for low fantasy, Crom the Destroyer. You can order that. Again, link for that is in the description. And if you like really good comics that are just about entertainment and trying, honestly, that's why I do these videos and try to learn so much about making comics, is because I want to entertain my audience and I want to give them the best story possible. And I need to learn more and more, no matter how many years I will do this more and more, how to make comics the right way. And so that's what you're going to get with my comics. So if you have a chance, go check out my graphic novel campaigns. Links are in the description. Thank you once again to everyone for showing up. And I will give you the short trailer, the second trailer for Crom the Destroyer as my outro. I'll see you all later. Bye.
No matter how many wars you fight, no matter how much blood you shed, no matter how much rage you loose, no matter how many demons you face, no matter how many companions you lose, no matter if our kingdom falls, I know that you will return to me in honor.